Good evening. It's Wednesday, July 6, 2022, 7 p.m., and I'll call to order the Ottawa City Commission meeting tonight. Can I have the roll call, please?
Mayor Crowley,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore,
Present.
Commissioner Kaler,
Present.
Commissioner Graves,
Present.
and Commissioner Clayton.
All right, welcome everybody tonight. Whether you're here in person or listening to us or on some sort of media, we'll start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by our Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Father, we give you thanks for this gathering and for everybody represented here. We do ask for clarity of mind as we look at the issues before us tonight. And Lord, we give you thanks too for the celebration this week of our Independence Day, independence from tyranny. We just thank you for the freedoms they fought for and that we can enjoy them today. Lord, our week was interrupted with bloodshed. We're so sorry to see the news. It's just heartbreaking to see. But God, we do pray for an extra measure of comfort for those that have lost loved ones and the quick healing for those that are injured. And Lord, lastly, we thank you for our city staff, for our workers, seeing them out there work today in the heat. We just give you thanks for these people that are making our city better every day. And we just ask you to bless them and their families. We thank you for this time. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore. That'll move us on to our consent agenda, which consists of our May 23rd study session, our June 6th study session, June 13th study session, our June 15th regular meeting, reappointment to the City Board. The Board of Zoning Appeals, Lucinda Cox, will go to April 2025, and our agenda approval. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved. That'll move us on to public comments. Do we have any public comments today?
We do have 3 registered for item number 12.
Just on the items? Okay. I'll dispense with that paragraph until we get to the item then. So that'll move us on to item 10, which is our declaration. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Hearing none, we'll move on to new business, which is item 11.
Acceptance of fiscal 2021 financial audit.
Mr. Gordon will give highlights of the 2021 financial audit. And I believe Mr. Gordon's on Zoom, correct?
That is correct. I'm here.
Hello.
Hello. So I can go through the audit report again if you would like me to, or I could just answer any questions that you have. So you just let me know which you prefer.
If you just want to give us some of the highlights, that'd be fine. And if we have any
Sure.
questions, we'll certainly ask.
Sounds great. So we'll start with pages 1 through 3. This is called the Independent Auditor's Report. And just the highlight of this section is that we issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest and cleanest opinion that we can issue the city under kind of state and federal auditing standards. Page 4, this is called the Summary Statement of Receipts, Expenditures, and Ending Cash. Here you'll find all of the funds of the city. And then in the very right-hand column at the very bottom is the total cash that the city and the library combined had on hand at December 31st, 2021. And then the next section forward is called the Notes to the Financial Statements. Quite a bit of information is discussed here, including the city's accounting policies, involvement in the CAPERS retirement programs, some capital project information, long-term debt, many other items discussed here that kind of back up the numbers that are presented on page 4 or that are presented later on in the financial statements. And then just give the reader of the financial statements just an overall kind of understanding of where the city is during the 2021 calendar year and then also as of 12/31. And then the rest of the audit report, the financial statements, are just more detailed breakouts of each of those funds that are presented on page 4. And there's a comparison to how each fund operated compared to the prior year, which is 2020, and also how it operated compared to the budget that was adopted for each fund for 2021. And then to remind everyone, we did have one auditor recommendation for the city commission and the mayor to be aware of. And it just had to do with some sales tax payments that were made on some credit card transactions. So there's 3 levels of recommendations that we can make, from least severe to more severe. And this was the least severe of the 3. So just something for the management, Richard and Melanie and the city commission and the mayor to just be aware of. And we'll check up on the status of that and make sure that it was kind of cleaned up when we do the audit next year. So we'll present that information next year at this time as well to all of you. So if you have any questions on any of that, please let me know.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Gordon?
Yeah, Mr. Gordon, I would just say just the things that were found, which, like I said, were very minimal, cosmetic. We can change those, fix those very easily, so I think it was a very good audit. I know tonight it looks like we've only spent 5 minutes on this, but we've had it for about 3 weeks, and I think all of us have looked through it at home, at work, wherever we've been, to look over the numbers, and everything added up right, by the way, so you're good there. But I think it was a good audit. I really do. I'm proud of our city staff for the accomplishments they do and the hard work they make to make this happen. This doesn't happen by accident. This happens with a lot of hard work. So with that, I'll make the motion. We approve item number 11 in our agenda.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, can I have a roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton is absent, and Mayor Crowley.
And I vote yes. Motion is approved. Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you.
That'll move us on to item 12.
Consideration of application for conditional use permit at 809 South Willow Street.
The applicant requested a conditional use permit to allow construction of a duplex in an R1 district. The Planning Commission recommended denial. The City Commission may adopt the Planning Commission's recommendation by a simple majority vote, override the Planning Commission's recommendation by a 3/4 vote, a valid protest had been received, or return the recommendation to the Planning Commission with a statement specifying the basis for the City Commission's failure to approve or disapprove. Director Hall, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. You stated a lot of things I could have said, so I don't need to state them any longer. But just as a reminder, Planning Commission held a public hearing on this item on June 8th. Planning Commission voted 4-1 to reject some of staff's recommended findings. Staff recommended approval of the conditional use permit to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission in turn voted 4-1 to recommend the conditional use permit not be approved. Neighboring property owners spoke at the public hearing, and they've spoken at City Commission meetings since. Some of the concerns they mentioned are that the duplex is out of character with the neighborhood or with that street, that block, which is pretty much entirely single-family detached homes currently. And they mentioned the potential detrimental effect on stormwater drainage. We'll point out that the city's crews went out and cleaned out the storm drains at the direction of the city manager since then. There was also mention of insufficient off-street parking for the duplex and a potential for excessive parking on the street. As you mentioned, the neighboring property owners did file a valid protest petition, and you also mentioned the 3 options that you have as a city commission as far as making a decision on this request. And I'll take any questions or comments you have at this point.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Director Hall?
Just one clarity I want to make sure of on this too is that it takes a simple majority to send it back to the Planning Commission or just accept their proposal. I wasn't sure if that.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Skidmore, it would take a simple majority of the commission to send it back, but you would need to agree on the reason that you're doing so and what you're asking the Planning Commission to reevaluate. The statute, I think, phrases it the reason that you're unable to come to a decision for the failure to approve or disapprove. So you would need to be specific about what deficiency you see in the Planning Commission's report to you and what exactly you want them to take a look at if you send it back to them. But that would take a vote of 3 of the 5 of you, tonight 3 of the 4 of you, unless Commissioner Clayton is on the phone at the time.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Director Hall? Mr. Finch, if you could just give us a few moments of your time just to for some legal information, not only on just if you could clarify some of our decision possibilities tonight, And then also, since we do only have 4 commissioners tonight, what we need to go through.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you accurately stated the state of the situation in the comments on the agenda. So the 3 options before you are to approve the Planning Commission recommendation, which would essentially deny the conditional use permit. You may disagree with and reject the Planning Commission's recommendation, and in this case, that means approve the conditional use permit. That would normally take 2/3 of you. Since a protest petition has been received, it would take 3/4 of you. And since there are 4 of you here tonight, that would take all 4 of you. So a unanimous vote would be needed to do that. The third option, as we just discussed, is to remand back to the Planning Commission with some statement about why you were unable to come to a decision tonight and what you want them to look at, which would help you arrive at what you need to make a decision. I would point out that, just briefly, the standard for all of these kinds of zoning amendments and conditional use permits are treated primarily as a zoning amendment under state law. There is a little wrinkle under our local ordinance that I'll talk about in just a second. The test is twofold. It's reasonableness and lawfulness. And you might remember we talked about this back when the application was before you out on the south end for the Kilo project, just south of Cuttings Addition. And lawfulness refers to, did you follow your own processes and procedures? In this case, the Planning Commission is kind of the trial court. They hear the evidence, they look at the factors, and they make recommendations based on looking at that. You kind of function as if you would, an appellate court, and your processes are a little more open. You don't have to provide the same amount of time to each speaker. You don't have to give each side the same amount of time. You don't even have to hold a public hearing. You take up the record that's given to you by the Planning Commission, and you evaluate it in light of the factors that are contained both in state law and in your zoning ordinance, which are the factors that the Planning Commission used. And so you will then decide tonight amongst those 3 options. I would note that as you have your conversation and discussion, as you have in the past, keep those factors in mind. Look at the 10 factors. I think there's 11 under your local ordinance, but one's not relevant. This is not a solid waste facility. So you can take a look at those, and as you frame your discussion, you can use those as guidelines. The other test is reasonableness, and that is, are you acting in a reasonable way? And those factors that we've talked about are part of what the Kansas courts have looked at to determine whether your action is reasonable. There is a presumption that the decision you make is reasonable and grounded in these factors that are contained both in the Planning Commission report, their findings, and in Section 26-110 of the City of Ottawa zoning regulations, whether the use is consistent with the intent and purpose of the regulations, location is compatible, et cetera, those factors that you have in front of you and have since you got the record from Director Hall. I would note that the court does not require that you look at each of those factors individually. It does not require that you weight them all equally. In fact, the courts have said that you don't have to use them at all. But we recommend that you do because so many of the court cases go back through those factors in making their decision, and we think that's the safest harbor for you to be in as you make this consideration this evening. So we encourage you to put your discussion and thoughts kind of organized along those guidelines as you do this. But those are the 2 legal tests that you have to look at. You're welcome to take public comment tonight on the issue from anyone. You're welcome to allow those comments to run long if you want, or to cut them off at a set time if you want. This is not a public hearing like the Planning Commission would conduct. And then you are free to have a discussion amongst yourselves as to what option you choose. And if you want to get into the reasons therefore, again, I just recommend you kind of use those guidelines as a basis. And remember that the Planning Commission, I think, looked at factors 2 and 6 and 7. And if you decide to differentiate yourselves from them, it would probably be good to say why you disagree with those findings in your analysis, if you choose to make a motion or have a discussion around a motion to deny their recommendation and move forward with the application. With that, I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Finch? All right. On the public comments, who we have tonight?
We have Nancy Lee Howe, Clark, and Louise Rain.
Okay. So, commissioners, do you have any questions that you might want to ask the applicant I'll do public comment. I'm going to go ahead and read this paragraph so we're all aware of this. Subject to the above restrictions, persons who wish to address the city commission regarding items on the agenda may do so at the agenda item is called. Persons who wish to address the city commission regarding items not on the agenda and that are under the jurisdiction of the city commission may do so at this time when called upon by the mayor. Comments on personal matters and matters pending in court or with other outside tribunals are not permitted. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and any presentation is for information purposes only. The governing body will take comments under advisement. Who's our first public comment?
Nancy Lehow.
Nancy, you want to come on up? Good evening, Nancy.
Nancy Leahy, live at 808 South Bell. Good evening again. We're at this point because of one thing. That's Mr. Vander, not on? Oh, thanks. It's- I'll whisper, okay. It's Mr. Vandervender's arrogance in thinking no neighborhood would object to a brand-new duplex, and his assumption that the city wants new housing so badly they will allow it regardless of anything else. That caused Mr. Vanderventer to fail to do his due diligence. He didn't know about the drainage problem. He didn't know about the traffic and parking problem. He didn't know just how strongly the neighborhoods would object. He didn't consider the real reason that lot has remained vacant for so long. The neighborhood should not be responsible for correcting his errors. Some commissioners have made some very biased and misleading statements in favor of this duplex. One twisted what the neighbors said by admitting the words "in the style of the other homes" and declared that building like the neighbors wanted was not cost effective. Cost is not the commission's concern, that's the builder's concern. One commissioner stated that the 2 existing drainage ditches, which will be covered up, were not any help anyway. The neighbors can tell you differently. One commissioner suggested that another landlord in the area didn't want the competition. That was never a consideration of the neighbors. That landlord spoke only regarding the drainage issues. In fact, his rentals will be much more attractive if this duplex goes up. One commissioner even suggested that Mr. Vanderventer could build an 8-bedroom single-family home with no parking, and we couldn't do anything about it. Well, idle threats don't scare this neighborhood, and quite possibly he underestimates us. We were told that emotions don't matter. The fact is, this is personal and this is emotional. You think about it, most laws are rooted in emotions because somebody cared. The actual applicant and landowner has made no statements. Everything you've heard has been his daddy's opinion and experience. Daddy threatened that he won't build anything there other than a duplex. Well, guess what? Daddy's not building there anyway. So where are we now? Parking issues and traffic issues aren't going away. The drainage problem has been almost completely ignored and would only be made worse. The building is still a duplex. The neighborhoods aren't changing their minds and may continue to fight it. The very issues the Planning Commission cited in its recommendation still exist with no viable solution. How can this commission justify approving this conditional use permit? Does your single desire for more bedrooms justify ignoring the problems and making more and just leaving the neighborhood to suffer the consequences? Thank you.
Thank you. Who's our next public comment?
Clark Rain.
Clark, you want to come on up? Good evening, Clark.
Good evening. Appreciate your time. My name's Clark Ryan. I'm at 803 South Willow. I stand up here for the fourth time to speak against issuing a conditional use permit for the proposed duplex at 809 South Willow. Residents from the notification zone have stood up here in the CUP hearing and proposed numerous concerns about the project, including drainage ditches being filled in, increased traffic and parking on a narrow street, how out of character a multifamily home would be in a neighborhood of period-specific single-family homes, among other issues. Many of the concerning issues were not under the purview of the City Development Commission and couldn't be considered. However, there were still multiple study deficiencies identified that resulted in the suggested denial of the CUP by the Development Commission. This denial, along with all the concerns that could be brought up to the city, coupled with the overwhelming neighborhood opposition, should make it easy to vote against the CUP by the City Council. However, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. The City Council has allowed the permit applicant's dad to speak on his behalf. Residents' concerns are seemingly dismissed. Stormwater issues, while marginally addressed on the lot and in the street, have been redirected in general in that the city has a project on another block, which should make me feel better. However, it doesn't. Parking on the street and traffic flow concerns have somewhat been ignored as well. The fact that a multi-family home is out of character with the neighborhood is redirected by stating that bungalows and Victorian homes aren't being built anymore. The residents aren't naive. We also recognize that a pop-up duplex isn't in character with an entire neighborhood of single-family homes, and that's our perspective. Mr. Van Deventer brings pictures of duplexes from around Ottawa outside the notification zone, and on the contrary, we as residents are continually reminded that only the notification zone will be taken into consideration. One of the commissioners has asked about what a homeowner to the south of the lot thought about the project. That landowner actually spoke at the CUP hearing against the project. The question alone lends itself to indicate that either the CUP hearing notes haven't been read by one or more commissioners, or that no care and consideration has been given to the residents opposing the project. Another commissioner has stated that they live by a duplex and they don't have a problem with it. That isn't our neighborhood, and that's not what we want. We would like to ask that the commission look past their long-standing relationship with the permit holder's father and cast the vote against the duplex. A duplex that will be out of character with the neighborhood and in strong opposition to the residents' wishes. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate the consideration.
Thank you, Clark. Who's our next public comment?
Louise, right? Great.
Come on up. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Louise Ryan at 803 South Willow. Needing to remove emotion continues to be a topic among the City Council regarding special use permit for the duplex at 809 South Willow. This is completely unrealistic since emotions are ever present under the surface of human objectivity. If I may remind you, emotion fueled the birth of our country. Our Declaration of Independence was written with the utmost emotion. Our Constitution, too, was written with emotion at its very core. Law is emotion. Being rigid and inflexible leaves little room for positive city interaction among her citizens. This, in fact, is a symbiotic relationship. While we need you, you need us. You absolutely can choose to turn down the duplex at 809 South Willow with the neighbor's emotion and concern in mind that the duplex will forever impact the style, the character, and the infrastructure of our block. Reject the special use permit for the duplex at 809 South Willow. Your roles are to facilitate city growth. Ostracizing the citizens of an entire city block is not facilitating positive growth. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. We don't have any more, right? Okay. Okay, Commissioners. So we've heard our legal advice tonight. We've heard from Director Hall, and we've heard public comments. We've had a discussion about this a couple weeks now. I guess how I'd like to proceed is we have 3 options here. I think I'd like to have a discussion about the 3 options. Maybe if there's one that we could eliminate quickly, if you think, and then maybe narrow it down to how we'd want to proceed from there. So, quite frankly, I'm certainly not in favor of sending it back to the Planning Commission. I believe that they've reviewed it, they've had their opportunity, and I think it's our duty to make a decision tonight on this item, not only for the neighborhood but for the developer, so that they can either proceed or figure out a different idea of what they want to do there. So that's my opinion. So any other thoughts on that?
I agree with that as well. I think it would just be using up more of everyone's time, both the neighbors and the builder as well, whichever way, and Planning Commission. So I also am not in favor of sending it back.
Okay.
I'll go. I'm not sure I'm not in favor of sending it back. I think that we all have points in which that we learn, and we learn how things work and how processes work. And I think that the Planning Commission had an opportunity to learn. And I think that sometimes we learn, and then one of my very favorite sayings is, when you know better, you do better. And we can't know when things sit in front of us. We have heard from many of the citizens several times and had several weeks to discuss this. And I don't know that I'm not in favor of sending it back. To be really clear, I don't have a complete vote one way or the other, but I'm not willing to take that off the table.
Okay. Commissioner Skidmore, any thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree with Sarah on this one here. Just let's get into the discussion, see where it goes. I don't know if I don't know where the rest of you stand. I've not talked with any of you about this as the way it should be, but I think maybe leave all the options open and let's see where this goes. I'm in favor of getting the discussion started.
Okay. So what would you like to discuss?
Well, let me start off with saying that, yes, I do live next door to a duplex. We bought the house, and it was about 3 years later, I think, when the duplex was built. And I have to admit, it did cause me to pause for a moment, but part of me recognized that it fit within the city guidelines. The owner of the property, he had a right to build this, and who am I to stand in his way? And now I hardly even notice there's a duplex next door to me. That's been years ago, and it was built, and I hardly notice it now. And I've developed some good neighbors, some friends. Even after they've moved out, some friendships have been developed. And so I realize there's more people coming in and out than there would be in a home. But at the same time, all the residents that we've experienced through the years have been very good people. So I don't have an issue with living next door to a duplex, and I don't think it's affected my property values either. I guess I'm looking at this, I've kind of 3 things I'm looking at. We as commissioners, we do serve at large positions. We're not in districts like the county nor neighborhoods. We represent the entire city, and so the decisions we make, we have to consider the entire city. And so when I see that, I think about the tax base on this property. And I realize there's a tax incentive to get it built and get it started, and after the first 10 years, there'll be little taxes on there, just be the same tax as what's on the property today. But someday, when this is 10 years from now, this will go on the tax rolls and be on the tax rolls for the next 80 years. And that helps the rest of the city, because if we can get our taxes up to a certain point, maybe we can kind of temper down a little bit. So it spreads the tax base, and I'm like that idea. We've had 2 housing studies done over the last about 5 or 6 years, and all of them seem to indicate, yes, we need more housing in Ottawa. And so it's hard to ignore that study that was done objectively from outside source. And then 2, we do need builders. For the longest times, there's been times when builders were afraid to come to Ottawa because we were somewhat restrictive. and that bothered me, and it's taken a long time to get past that. We are doing much better, and we have many new structures infilling in parts of town, and it's good to see that taking place. So I don't want to dissuade builders coming to Ottawa if we are difficult to deal with. Now, I know this is a specific situation, specific location, but if word gets around that we could be difficult, or people don't want infill, and where a lot of the open lots are right now, they could be damaging to our potential for housing growth. And with that, I'll stop.
Commissioner Graves?
I would agree with really everything that Commissioner Skidmore had said, and I know, it is a very emotional topic, and we would love to make everyone happy, but that's also not sitting up here something that we can normally do. Usually we make someone angry. So, but I am, in looking at the Planning Commission's, I'm looking at the staff findings from the conditional use permit, and the Planning Commission had disagreed with number 2, which I believe is whether the location of the proposed use is compatible to other land uses in the surrounding neighborhood. Item 6, whether the applicant's property is suitable for the proposed conditional use, and 7, the recommendations of professional staff. And, going back to those specific findings that the Planning Commission disagreed with, I have to actually agree with staff on all of those findings. I do think it's compatible with the neighborhood, and that, the property is suitable for use, and the staff had recommended the approval. So that's my thought on the subject.
Thank you. Commissioner Kaler, do you have any comments?
I do. Pardon me. There has been, and it's of concern to me, there's been a negative picture that's actually been painted about the value of a duplex in this community. And we're not calling it a duplex. I can't remember. It's a single family detached, or it's a special word. It's a duplex, people. That's what it is. But I had to step back and think about who is it that lives in a duplex? College students? Perhaps. Yes, and I know that's been brought up. But perhaps it is the young married couple, just like my husband and I were just a few decades ago, who were looking for a community to call home. I think that would have been a win if we would have lived in that duplex. Perhaps it is the young retired couple who has spoken to me in the last 12 hours, who is doesn't want to move out of our community, but wants a home with a smaller footprint and a maintenance-free home. Doesn't want to move out of Ottawa, and we don't want to lose them either. Those are wins for our community. Those small, or those young couples that want to call this home, the retired couple that want to, or the retired individual or couple that want to live here but just don't need the upkeep of a home. When they move out, when that retired couple moves out of their home, they provide a home for a family that is in good condition, and they move and stay in our community. In 2022, so a decade ago, CNN Money listed Ottawa as one of the best places to retire. I think if this duplex is built, that's what we're going to see. It's just a great community. That's a great block that you all live in. I went to school at Eugene Field. I know. I walked home from there, and I had lots of friends. One of my friend's grandmothers lived on that block until just very recently. I think you're going to find one of those individuals. I don't think you're going to find college students there. I think you're going to find that young married couple who's looking for somewhere to live. I think you're going to find that retired couple who wants somewhere to live and loves the community and loves everything about Ottawa. So that's my holdback, really, is that I recognize that that spot has been open for, and that lot has been open for years, and that you get used to seeing it not filled. But I also recognize that it could be a great new place for people who we want in our community to live. So.
Thank you. When I initially heard the decision that the Planning Commission made, I quite honestly, I was dumbfounded. I thought, how could we turn down building? How could we turn down, multifamily, a duplex? It's something that, as Commissioner Skidmore stated, that the housing study says we need. We need more housing. Everybody wants to grow the community, bring more people to town, spread the tax burden, so on and so forth. And I was surprised. But I've listened to the comments, over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of stuff's come to make me think more. I think about how the applicant had the ability to build a duplex at 309 Maple and was told, yeah, that's not going to work, and immediately backed out of that. Knowing that he would have probably went through the same scenario that he's going through right now. So what makes those folks in that area's opinions any different than the folks at 809 Willow? And I've listened to Clark and his wife and kids talk, and they make a lot of valid points. I really believe that. What I do want, Clark, you to know is that you made a comment earlier that resident concerns are dismissed, and I totally disagree with that. I will tell you that. Your concerns, certainly, I've listened to, and they are valid. I understand that. And I have no relationship with the builder. So, that's nothing that I'm taking into account either. And I'm not saying that any of the other commissioners up here do. I just, I want to make sure that, that's out there. But, this is a difficult decision I've made because keep in mind, I'm a contractor, I'm a builder. I beat the drum, when it comes to building here in town. It's important, we want to do that. But then again, I wear the two hats, and if anybody knows me, I talk about this all the time. I wear the builder's hat, the contractor's hat, but I also wear the commission's hat. And, certainly we're elected officials up here, and we're elected by the people that sit out there and tell us, how they feel. And I certainly want everybody to know that their opinions are heard, and it's not just pushed to the wayside because there's a builder in town and we need another house. So it's a difficult decision, quite honestly, for me.
I might just add one more thing too. Living next door to the duplex, bringing that up again, but it's been there for close to 20 years, I think. And I think there's only been one time when there's been 2 college students in there, and I rarely saw them. And there's 2 duplexes across the street that have older ladies in them, and they've been there ever since they've been built, so there's not much movement there. And the one on my side has had some movement, but mostly it's been professionals. There's been a couple of professors from OU, been people that, just like the rest of us in this room, that you can't tell a difference, and they're quiet. I've never had any issues with noise. Probably more noise coming from my house when our kids are growing up than over there, but nonetheless, I don't want to say this, that you're going to 3 years from now, oh, this was a nothing really thing that we brought up. I think sometimes as you think initially, the worst case scenario is going to be, 4 college kids on each side, and what do we do with all the noise? But I just learned sometimes things don't turn out as badly as it seems like as you may think they are at this point. I also have no professional relationship with the builder, so I want to make sure that's clear as well. But I will make the motion that we approve item 12 on our agenda at this time.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
What
clarify?
specifically? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Mike, can you clarify your motion?
Well, that we approve the conditional use permit for 809
Okay.
South Willow.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
We have a motion to approve the CUP at 809 South Willow. Is there a second?
I would second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I also want to say, too, that I've given this a lot of deep thought, too. I don't want to think that this has just been a flippant decision on my part. I've gone back and forth on it myself a couple times. Your comments are very, well, you did a good job with the presentation. I want to say that to you. I appreciate the peaceful way you brought the complaints. I appreciate that it was done in the way it should be done in a discourse up here at this bench, but at the same time, we may not agree with it, and just because I don't agree with you all on your opinions doesn't mean there's any less respect for you all for bringing this forward. So I just wanted to mention that before we vote.
Any other comments?
No, I would agree with his comments, with Commissioner Skidmore's comments. Thank you.
Can we have the roll call vote, please?
How do you vote? Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton is absent. Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Crowley?
I vote yes. Motion is approved. That will move us on to item 13.
Request for approval of consulting service agreement for moderate income housing grant application and administration.
The agreement with Southeast Kansas Regional Planning Commission for the application and administration of the state's MIH grant program. Consulting fees would be $5,000 for pre-award services and $15,000 for post-award services. Director Hall, welcome.
Thank
Again.
you. Thank you. You just said it all right there. I mean, that's the most important part of it.
There's got to be something else you can add to it.
Yeah, I can add a few things.
All right,
So,
thank you.
Like you said, this is an agreement with the Southeast Regional Planning Commission to assist us with an application for the MIH grant. There will be an RFP that is released on July 8th. The application deadline for that RFP, relative to that RFP, is September 30th. The real reason for this consulting contract is to make sure the city has the best shot at getting a grant award. The $5,000 in fees, that's pre-award. So if that's not awarded, then we talk about trying for the next round. The MIH program, what's anticipated are 3 rounds of grants, 3 rounds of applications, with the first one having the September 30th deadline, and then another one in January most likely, and then another one in the spring. That really concludes my remarks, unless there are questions. City manager might have something to add, but we are recommending that you enter into this agreement.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for either Director Hall or City Manager on this item?
If there are no questions, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consulting services agreement with the MIH grant application and administration.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton is absent. Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
And Mayor Crowley?
And I vote yes, the motion is approved. Thank you, Director Hall.
Thank you.
That'll move us on to item 14.
Request for approval of ordinance vacating setback lines and pedestrian easements on a final subdivision plat of the Coves at Tallgrass Phase 1.
Setback lines are on lots 13 through 20, 23, 27 through 32, 35 through 44, and 46 through 48. Pedestrian easements on lots 26 through 31 and Track B. The Planning Commission has reviewed and by a vote of 4-0, recommends by a vote 4-0, subject to conditions outlined in the ordinance. Director Hall?
Thank you. If you could turn in your packet to this exhibit, and I believe this is slide 4 on here if you want to go to this slide. I believe it's slide 4. Yes, okay, thank you. So the applicant, Coves at Tallgrass LLC, they own over 20 lots in the subdivision, and they're requesting these vacations of setback lines and pedestrian easements. The city owns lots 29 and 30 and Track B. It makes a lot of sense, it's a practical decision to include the city's property in this application. It just makes a lot of sense to do that. This exhibit shows you by the solid red line, the setback lines that are being vacated, or the request to vacate. The dashed lines are not part of the application. So the red line that has those dots, those black dots, those are not part of the vacation proposal. Additionally, this shows the lots where the city has issued a building permit and there's been a structure built, and also the yellow outline are the permits have been issued, but the buildings are under construction at this time. The blue line is the pedestrian easement that's proposed to be vacated. So just to summarize the key findings that you're required to make when you do a vacation, the first one is that proper legal notice of the request of vacations has been given. So a notice was published in the Ottawa Herald. A notice of the public hearing was mailed to all the owners in the Cove subdivision and owners of the adjacent land abutting on the south and north. In addition, this goes beyond the requirements, but in addition, the applicant conducted an informational open house on May 12th. All owners receiving the notice of the public hearing also were notified and invited to this open house. And no one attended that I'm aware of at that open house, but that open house was well notified and was held. The second finding that you're supposed to make as part of this is that the rights of other property owners are not negatively affected. The wording is a little different than that, but that's essentially what it means. So the setback lines being vacated affect only those lots owned by the applicant and those owned by the city. To promote compatibility of development, it is appropriate the setback lines on the two lots owned by the city are vacated. As I mentioned earlier, the applicant and city staff have received no objections to the request for vacations. Third point, the public will suffer no loss or inconvenience. New construction will be required to comply with the setbacks required by the zoning. So even though the setback lines are being vacated, the zoning classification, which is R2, Housing Opportunity Overlay District, it requires building setbacks, and they will have to comply with those. Regarding the sidewalk, the ordinance that approves the vacation includes the condition that requires that there be no, or ensures there's no gap in the sidewalk. The applicant, when they build on those lots just to the north of lots 29 and 30, prior to them getting certificate of occupancy for those two houses, they will be required to replace that sidewalk. That sidewalk will be replaced in the public right-of-way where sidewalks are typically located. Where the pedestrian easement and the existing sidewalk is being retained, any new parking stalls or driveway shall have a length of 20 feet or more behind the sidewalk to prevent cars and trucks from blocking the public sidewalk. This is not something that's required in code. It just kind of makes sense. The applicant agreed to do that. That ensures that those pedestrian easements function well. And speaking mainly to the lots that are kind of on the south, right where Blue Stem Drive intersects with Elderberry Lane, you can kind of see the sidewalk right there. So these will be conditions that are in the ordinance. The other thing is that the ordinance will be, once it's adopted, if you would decide to adopt the ordinance, it will be recorded with the Register of Deeds. So future owners will have that knowledge as they purchase lots for construction or homes. That concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And the applicant is here to answer those questions as well that you might have.
Commissioners, any questions for either Director Hall or the applicant on this item? I want to make a comment. As I stated before, the builder has already built two houses there and hired my company as a contractor. So to avoid any kind of conflict that may come up, I will abstain from voting on this. So I just want to make the commission aware of that.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? How would you like to proceed?
I think this is a great idea here, and we really appreciate the investment being made in our community. So with all that said, I'll just go ahead and approve. I suggest that we approve item number 14 on our agenda.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
How do you vote? Commissioner Clayton is absent. Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore?
Yes.
And Mayor Crowley, you're abstaining.
I abstain, yes. Motion is approved. Thank you. Appreciate your commitment to the community. That'll move us on to item 15, which is comments by our city manager.
Commissioners, thank you. I do have several things. So, a heads up, in the next couple weeks, you will be seeing the bids on the K-68 paving project. I believe you will see that as early as Monday at your study session. And today, we took bids on the Cedar Street, and both of these bids came in under the engineer's estimates. The Cedar Street was a pleasant surprise. It was at least $300,000 under what the engineer's estimate is. And the engineer has taken that back to do his due diligence and make sure everyone did their calculations right and they bid on everything. So you will not see that Monday, but I anticipate you will see that on the 18th. You'll have some other issues coming before you, I think, and future issues, some of which deal with recreational facilities in the community. And it really is a chance for you to engage the citizenry. It's a chance to have a discussion about where you want to go with those. It is a chance to actually get the community involved in some aged facilities, perhaps some new facilities that they don't have. So I think that's going to be exciting. I would also say that several of us are making a trip to Topeka tomorrow to talk to the executive director of the Kansas Housing Resource Council. And we're not only going to talk about MIH, but we're also going to listen about what other programs are available to our community, and especially some programs that are available because of the good works of our representative in the legislature this year. And I want to say something about sidewalks. I see a lot of sidewalks discussions about why are you building that there and why can't you do that here? So I will tell you that every new sidewalk you see in town has generally been done with a grant. The sidewalks you see building on K-68, they aren't there because we decided to spend our money. We are there because the state had a grant program, and yes, we pay taxes, and some of those are our funds also, but I think if people would understand, we get far more back than what we actually pay in taxes back to this community from the state to help with that, part of their revenue sharing. Existing sidewalks, I want you to think about existing sidewalks. We've had them in place for 100 years. And this is where all communities fall down on infrastructure when they built streets, when they built curb and gutter, when they built sidewalks 100 years ago. There was not much thought given to what happens at the end of the life cycle when repairs have to be made. And we still do that to a large extent. I guarantee you, when you look at the coves in 15 or 20 years, there will be a discussion about the condition of the sidewalks. There'll be a discussion about the condition of the curb, about the condition of the street. Sidewalks by statute, at least for now, are spelled out as the responsibility of the property owners. We have money available to help with that. We've advertised that. We have done that in several cases over the years, help repair sidewalks. Now, what I would suggest to you is that at some point, I believe that the discussion that you ought to have is how do we handle it? Because we're in a different place with sidewalks than what we were 100 years ago. We emphasize having a healthy community. We see a lot of people using those sidewalks as their mode of transportation. Our children, our grandchildren play on those sidewalks, and repairs are needed. So maybe it's time that we had a discussion, and the money we set aside, we just simply understand that the sidewalks are no longer neighborhood sidewalks, but they are used by the community at large. And it may simply be time for the decision makers of the city to recognize that and start putting money directly into repairing those sidewalks worse. Now, there are a lot more needs than what we have resources available. But this may be the opportunity for you to really talk about a different direction in the future about how we repair our infrastructure. So, commissioners, that's all I have.
Thank you. That'll move us on to comments by our city commissioners. Commissioner Kaler.
None at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Graves.
I have no comment.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore.
And just briefly, Senator Jerry Moran was in town the other day and took a tour of our hospital, along with the mayor and city manager and a few others. And I just wanted to say it was great to take a tour of the hospital. I guess I hadn't taken one for a long, long time. But anyway, just wanted to say how proud I am that we've got an excellent hospital in this community, with the way they can treat people with expanded care, and they're expanding even more as we speak at the Gollier Center. So I just want to say kudos to our hospital. We're glad they're here, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. That'll move us on to comments by the mayor. I'd like to thank the commission. Great discussion tonight, especially item 12. I know that's a difficult decision to make, but you know, it was a great discussion. I think we had a lot of good back and forth there. Also, I know a few of you have been on here way longer than I have and dealt with it more than I have. But I think that's why we do this. Though everybody always says they want to make a difference in our community, and you know, this is how we make a difference, by sitting up here and making these difficult decisions. So, commissioners, thank you for having that discussion. That'll move us on to announcements. July 11th, we have our study session here at 4 p.m. We have a joint.
When you're done.
Okay. I didn't know if it was canceled or not.
No.
We have a City-County USD 290 joint luncheon at 12 p.m. here at City Hall, July 13th. July 18th, we have a study session at 4 p.m. And then July 20th, we have a regular meeting at 10 a.m. at City Hall. Any other things?
So Congress.
Congress.
Almost elevated you there. So.
No thanks.
So, commissioners, I might also add that Congresswoman Davids was in our community today.
Oh.
I know she visited several facilities. This is her new district. We didn't hear much about that, but she was here today, so you had 2 visits by federal officials this week.
Thank you. Anything else come before the commission? I will adjourn.